Hey, it's Cory, Boldroff, the real estate guy, doing May's monthly market update to keep you current on what's going on with the real estate market, what's happened, where we are now, and maybe where we're headed in the future. But using real stats and facts so that way you guys can be educated and know how to make the best decision for you and your family. So, without further ado, let's get into it. I want to start off with the first quote from Sam Cater, the Vice President and Chief Economist from Freddie Mac. The main driver of the housing shortfall has been the long-term decline in the construction of single-family homes. That decline has resulted in a decrease in the supply of the entry-level single-family homes or starter homes. So basically from the 2008 crash, a lot of builders still have a hangover and are still reluctant to get back into it. This year, we actually had a huge growth in permits pulled for new builders built. So hopefully as we come into 2022, we start catching up with inventory and new homes will come onto the market. So as we look through single family housing units completed by decade, we can see on average, on a 10-year period, we usually average anywhere from 10 to maybe 12 million homes per year. This last 10 years, again, because of the crash that happened in 2008, a lot of builders are reluctant, some even went out of business. So we're just in a very big shortage of housings that's being built. And this is what's causing also in that low inventory, causing this huge increase of appreciation and huge frenzy that's going on in today's market. Google reported last week that the search question, when is the housing market going to crash, spiked over 2,450% in the past month. We know it's happening on the news, social media, everyone's talking, when is the market going to crash, when it's going to crash? I can tell you based on the stats and the facts, there is no crash coming into the future that any of the chief economists and the professionals and experts predict in any sort of fashion. Right now, what we're seeing in this market really has to do with a lack of inventory rather than any other statistical or key indicators indicating that we're going to come into this housing bubble, housing crash. When we look at the year-over-year change in listings, we can see that this time last year, the overall total listings were actually 53% lower than we were in 2020, and 2020 was already a low year comparatively to the years before. A lot of it had to do with the pandemic. Right now, we do see a little bit of a spike in new listings, but that had to do more with what was happening this time last year. We were just in the very beginning of the pandemic. No one really knew what was going on, and a lot of sellers and agents pulled those new listings off the market. So right now, we do show a spike year over year compared to last time in May, but realistically, we're still under what we were last year. When we look at the inventories of single family homes, 2020 in December, we were about 1,200,000. In December 2021, we're at 880. So we're a little under half, or a little over half what we were this time last year. And even coming into March, we still haven't fully recovered in the inventory. So not enough homes are coming onto the market. Some of it has to do with the slowdown in new builds, as well as there's a stat that was done that NAR and Association of Realtors did that 72% of the people who are thinking about selling aren't putting their homes on the market until we're completely out of the safe home order, until we're completely vaccinated. But as we're getting closer and closer to coming out of those tiers in each individual state, as well as we are getting fully vaccinated, a lot of senior citizens are fully vaccinated at this point in time. So as we come into summer, a lot of experts see that there's going to be an increase in new listings, overall listings. So hopefully this helps our market and helps stabilizes those prices and buyer frenzy. It remains strong as home buyers are snatching up listings quickly off the MLS. It takes approximately 18 days for a home to go on the market to contract in the current housing market. And this also depends on what state you're in. In California, we're more like 3 to 7 days on the market to get into contract. A year ago, it took 29 days. Again, that is still statistically a lot lower. An average market, we're usually 60 days on the market, coming on the listings to get into contract. So we're still half, if not even less than half, of what a normal stable market is. When will U.S. housing inventory grow again? This is just all the survey of economists. They, are anywhere from it's going to start growing the first quarter of the year. Well, that didn't really happen. So a lot of people are starting to say that after the second quarter, come into June and July, come into the summer months, we're going to start seeing an increase in housing inventory. Some others think that it's going to take into 2022 to maybe even out into 2023. So as long as the inventory stays low, we're going to keep seeing the appreciation of prices and people keep bidding over the list price and even over market value, appraised value. A lot of times right now, buyers are willing to pay over appraised price. Some of it is because there's a lot of influx in cash, the extraordinary low interest rates, so it's causing buyers to be willing to take out money out of their 401ks, stock markets, things like that, and put it into the housing market. Top 5 reasons homeowners plan to sell this year. Number 1 is our home no longer meets our needs. We've been seeing that a lot because of the pandemic. A lot of what was important in a home is no longer important into a home, and things have changed. We can make a profit in the current market. So a lot of people are realizing like, wait, I can sell my house for that. I know I personally was in that standpoint. I thought, wow, if I can make $100,000 in 3 years in my home, put it on the market, and actually my home sold for $185,000 more than I bought it bought it 3 years ago. And we actually got about $40,000 to $60,000 over the appraised price. So buyers are willing to pay that. And a lot of that has to do with different markets are changing. So people are moving out of the urban areas, out of the city areas, out of the congested valley and into the suburbs. And that's causing for a lot of high demand in suburban areas. We also, number 3 was we want a smaller house with less work. Since they're at home more, some people are starting to say, you know what, I don't want to have to take care of my home as much. I don't want the big fancy yards. So we're starting to see that change. But I can also say in California, it's probably on the other way where people want to build and come out of those condos and townhomes and actually need more space. So I'm not sure I necessarily agree with that. But again, this is not my opinion. I'm basing it on facts. We want to live closer to friends and family. We've definitely seen the pandemic change that dynamic of family and a lot more support with the community and within the families themselves. We want different features and amenities. So maybe they don't want the pool themselves, maybe they want the community pool. So all those have to do with why homeowners are wanting to sell. Prospective homebuyers plan to buy a home in the next 12 months. As we can see in 2020, the first quarter is about 10%, and we've seen it grow up to 6 points higher than it was a little bit over a year ago. So a lot more demand, a lot more buyers, a lot more millennials, people that are renting realizing, wait a second, my rent keeps going up, and when I look at what I can buy a home for, once you calculate appreciation growth, equity growth, write-offs, and different things like that, it's actually cheaper to own a home than it is to rent a home. So I would urge you, if you are renting, give me a call, give your realtor a call, give your mortgage consultant a call. I almost guarantee that you can own a home cheaper than you can rent a home in today's market. When we look at the average profit for home sellers, it increased by 26% from this year to same time last year to this year. That's an incredible. We have seen an extraordinary growth in income or in appreciation, and a lot has to do with that low inventory. When you have one home and 100 buyers looking at it, there's always the one buyer who's willing to overpay for the home. And right now we're just seeing it continually happen when homes go on the market, because there's not 10 homes to choose from, there's one home to choose from, or maybe 2. So again, urge you, if you're thinking about selling the next 3 years, right now might be one of the best times to buy. There's a lot of investors that are willing to buy a home and allowing that current homeowner to stay in there, and sometimes even rent-free for an extended period of time. Lawrence Yu, the chief economist of National Association of Realtors, said this is not a bubble. It is simply a lack of supply. So again, lack of inventory is what's causing what's going on in our market today. So we're going to talk a little bit about the forbearance update. I know we've been talking about it for the last year. You can check back in the beginning of the pandemic when the forbearance started to happen. So, I do want to go into it a little bit. So the number of mortgages in active forbearance is unchanged in the last 3 weeks, meaning that we're not having an uptick and we're not getting out of them any further than we were before. We know, this time last year, there's 4.76 million people that went in forbearance, either took a delay in their mortgage payments, put them on the back end, worked out different arrangements with their bank. Whereas right now we're hovering right around 2.32 million. And historically, statistically, we're usually hover right around 1 million people that are in forbearance, in some type of forbearance or some type of distress situation with as far as the payments are considered in a normal housing market. 400,000 mortgages left in forbearance in the last 2 months. So we can see, over the last 2 months, we've slowly crept down and taken jumps in people coming out of forbearance, making payment plans, paying them off completely. So we're starting to make really good headway back into that normal stable market for forbearances. When we look at what's happened over the year-over-year trend, where 47% were paid in full. So 25% made their monthly payments during the forbearance period, 75% actually paid off the loan, and 14% past due payments were brought current. So a lot of good headway is happening in that forbearance market. We can see that there are modifications that have been made. There's people that actually made a loan deferral, meaning that they put it on the back end, so they're starting to catch up as well. But there still is 14.6 that are still in that mitigation plan, and the banks and the homeowners are trying to find a way to help them save that home. Ultimately, these people will be able to put their houses on the market and sell it for current market value, still retain some of their equity, and not go into an actual foreclosure where the bank actually takes back that property. So pretty good news. It's no good news to seeing someone in forbearance or coming into foreclosure, but it's good news that we're not going to have this huge influx of homes that would actually affect the housing market itself. When we look at the upon forbearance, so again, this time last year, we're 52%. We're paid in full. We're down to 47%. We're realizing that there's an uptick in people that have worked out a payment plan or some type of plan to make themselves get out of forbearance. And we just have a little uptick in people that are still in trouble percentage-wise, and mostly that's to do with a lot of people getting out. So there's less people in forbearance. So the people that are still remaining in forbearance, that number just ticked up 1%. I think the math speaks for itself, how well the forbearance program has worked. And it's one of the few times in my career that I've seen a government-initiated program adopted as well and executed as well by the industry as this one, according to EFP Realty Track, Rick Sharda. So according to the Wall Street Journal, consumers were most upbeat about their income prospects last month, and many appear eager to spend. The survey found that 8.9% of Americans plan to buy a home in the next 6 months, the biggest share in record going back to 1978. So again, buyer demand is growing exponentially right now because of low interest rates. The economy is coming back to where it was pre-pandemic, because we were one of the best economies we've ever been in, statistically wise, right before the pandemic hit. So we're starting to come back, the economy's starting to bounce back, and a lot of people are upbeat about it. As well as when the government pumps in $4.7 trillion in the economy, there's a lot more cash in the economy, so people have that flex to do things with it. Hopefully it doesn't cause too much inflation. Mortgage rates, we've seen them go from 3.7% in the beginning of 2020 to dip all the way down to the low twos, and now we're hovering right around under 3%, which are great historically. We usually hover around 5 to 7% for interest rates. So anywhere in the threes is great, making it a great time to buy for long-term investments for real estate. When we look at the mortgage rate projections, according to the big banks and associations, we're looking that they're going to stabilize. We're looking that rates are going to hover, anywhere from the low threes to the mid threes, are going to stay pretty stable as we come into the second and third and fourth quarter, and maybe even till next year. So great, if this does stay stable and if rates do stay relatively low, this will help the real estate market stay stable and to have that steadily in growth of appreciation that we will do. According to mortgage rates, Freddie Mac, we did have an actual and a projected. They've basically been staying very, very consistent with Freddie Mac's projections, and they do see that they are going to increase as we come from now into next year. It's just how fast, how aggressive they're going to increase is going to depend on how much it affects the real estate market itself. Home prices forecasting. So we do see another forecast up as high as 10% appreciation. And again, this is nationwide. California actually itself actually increased even higher than the 10%. But we're seeing that over this next year, we are going to see another increase in appreciation. And I even think it's going to be higher than the numbers that we're seeing here, especially if inventory stays relatively low. Home sales forecasted to increase nicely in 2021 and do well in 2022. So on average, we average about 6.5 million homes. And so we're going to see an uptick in homes sold this year and next year, which is a very good sign. As more homes come on the market, the buyer demand staying relatively high, we're going to keep seeing houses come on the market and sell relatively quickly. So perception is strong, sight is weak. It is in strategy. It's important to see distant things as if they were close and to take distance view of close things. So this is why I do these market updates, is to give you the real stats and facts, give you what the chief economists are saying, the professionals, the experts are saying, and that way you can be educated and decide what is best for you and your family. As always, if you want a home equity stance of where you're sitting with your home, maybe a neighborhood market search, whatever you want, know that I'm always here to help, never here to pressure. You even just need a referral or some advice, a second opinion, please give me a call, Cory Boldroff, the real estate guy. Until next month, let me know if you guys have any questions.